Hello fellow collectors, I hope you're all doing wonderfully well today. Today I'm going to continue my series about the best films that I watched in the preceding month. So without further ado, here are the best films I watched in June. First up, and we have a film I watched by chance on the 1st of June, and it's Gideon's Day. This one comes from the John Ford box set from Indicator, one of 4 films included. It's of course directed by John Ford, and it's from 1958, starring Jack Hawkins as our main protagonist, Inspector George Gideon of Scotland Yard. As the title suggests, this follows a day in the life of the inspector, with all the ups and downs, work and family life, struggles and little victories. I really enjoyed this one a lot. Despite some tough subject matters and difficult situations, there is a thread of humour woven expertly throughout this, which adds just a wonderful flavour to the film as a whole, and in no way seems incongruous. Gideon manages to keep his wits, keep his cool, and keep his good humour despite dealing with murder scenes, thefts, pressure from his superiors, breaking hard news, and the list goes on. I'm not really sure what I expected going into this one, but it definitely surprised me in a great way. I'm slightly hesitant to call it quite a bad day cure, but it honestly isn't far from that. A really fantastic film. Next is Deep Water, a film directed by Bill Duke, starring Lawrence Fishburne and Jeff Goldblum from 1992. I think I'd sum this one up with a quote from Spectre, where one of the baddies tells James Bond, "You're a kite dancing in a hurricane, Mr. Bond." And I feel like that is Lawrence Fishburne's character in this film. It's a stunning and poignant dissection of morality. There's so much that I could say about it, but I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Let me just say that when your ideas about morality get questioned, what course of action should you take? Can ends ever justify the means? Are right and wrong clear-cut concepts? Are our institutions embodiments of right and criminality the embodiment of wrong? Or is there in fact a lot more grey? This film delves into these questions and perhaps the reality of these things, and does so with excellence. It's a really stunning work, a fantastic screenplay by Michael Tolkien and Henry Bean, great direction by Bill Duke, and top-tier acting. A neo-noir as it should be. I thought I'd seen the pinnacle of neo-noir with Devil in a Blue Dress, but this honestly might challenge it for me. It was really something special, and I'd go as far to say it feels more relevant than ever, with a really great ending. I could not recommend checking this one out more. Next is Ship of Fools, another one I picked up from Indicator in a past sale. I picked this one up without much knowledge of it, and I had no idea what an incredible cast it had, including Vivien Leigh, Simone Signoret, and Lee Marvin, among many others. It's a film from 1965 and directed by Stanley Kramer. Usually when a film is well north of 2 hours like this one is, I find it can drag, or just be a bit bloated, but this one honestly kept me engaged throughout, and I found myself wanting even more of it, which is very unusual for me. It follows several passengers and some crew of an ocean liner heading to Germany from Mexico, and set in 1933. We have Germans, Americans, Jews, the Spanish, Cubans, and a dwarf, all with their stories set in this very present political context of the interwar period. The film weaves the tale of their interactions, the characters all with depth and feeling fully realised, some espousing certain political beliefs of the time, some just lonely and looking for companionship. We have both young and old, married and divorced, some with emotional baggage that is pretty much as present as their actual baggage. It's an excellent film that, as I said, kept me wanting to see even more. Wonderful acting all around here, and some great and pretty sobering comments on the mindsets running up to World War II. Now, near the end of June, I decided to pay for a month of Now TV movies, as they had enough on there that I wanted to see where I thought it would be worth paying for. Well, it paid off fairly quickly, because the second film that I watched on there was Nobody. And watching that might actually be the most fun I've had watching a film for the entire month. While not the best film perhaps, it was just a fantastic ride. I'd heard lots of good things about this one, but let's be honest, Saul Goodman isn't exactly an action hero, right? Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. Odenkirk here is absolutely excellent, and I'd love to see some follow-ups to this one, or just to see him in some more varied roles, because that man has range. It's quite a short film, at only 88 minutes, but there's just nothing superfluous. It's short but tight. Everything is there for a reason, makes sense, and works really well. With a lot of these bigger films in recent months, I've found myself bored by many of the action scenes, as I think I've said multiple times in past videos. Lots of CGI stuff, lots of stuff going on, a visual soup where you can barely focus, and it's simply boring to watch. Well, I'm delighted to say that this film was a breath of fresh air. I actually found myself totally engaged in the action scenes, and while perhaps not entirely realistic, certainly much more on the realistic side. And there's also plenty of humour to enjoy here. I laughed out loud multiple times during this one, sometimes at how ludicrous the situation was, sometimes at how much our protagonist seemed to be enjoying himself in the midst of brutality, and the humour entirely landed for me, unlike plenty of other action films where it just feels cringy or wildly out of place. I will say that it did feel fairly derivative of John Wick, though of course with plenty of differences, but it's a similar type of premise. Nevertheless, I loved every second of this and highly recommend it if you're after a solid action film that is great fun to watch, and where you can just turn off your brain for an hour and a half. And last but not least, we have Le Grande Illusion, a film from 1937 and directed by Jean Renoir. This edition is from Studio Canal's Vintage World Cinema line and includes a gorgeous slipcover, though one that sadly has the same artwork as the case. This one is a true classic, starring the incredibly iconic Erich von Stroheim, as well as Jean Gabin, who is more or less our protagonist here. This one was a powerful watch, though I think it lacked in certain ways from what we would expect from a prisoner of war escape film, which essentially is what this is, that we might expect to see these days. Of course, this was made prior to World War II, and that's, I feel, reflected in the level of suffering that we see in prisoner of war camps, which, though there are plenty of hints at some harsh treatment, can certainly feel a bit glossed over, and of course they had no idea at this point what horrors World War II was about to bring. Nevertheless, there are a lot of interesting themes in this one, particularly for me the idea of duty not hate, escape without malice, this notion of having to do things because of duty rather than the desire to do them. There's something more civilized, particularly embodied by Erich von Stroheim's character as well as Pierre Fresnay's character, both of whom are officers with commission. The idea of fighting for cause, for country, for family, which feels noble. However, in doing so, and shown so well here, there is the inevitable destruction of all of these things in the process, and we see that firsthand as the film progresses. Despite its age, I feel like this film is still very relevant in so many ways, and one that is very much worth periodically revisiting. Just the one honourable mention from me this month, and that's the effect of gamma rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds, which might be one of the worst or best titles ever, I can't quite decide. A great release from Indicator and actually directed by the legendary Paul Newman. Well, that was my June in film. I hope yours was excellent, and that your July has been going great as well. I hope you're managing to stay cool in this wild heat, and I'll see you in the next video.